The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered above me, casting pale, uneven circles of light on the cracked asphalt of Lot 13. It was one of those sprawling, nearly empty parking lots that felt like it stretched into infinity. Most people avoided this place at night, but for me, it was a paycheck. Easy money, or so I had thought when I took the job. I'd been working security here for just over 2 weeks. "You'll mostly just be keeping the place empty," my boss had said during orientation, waving a hand dismissively. "There's no foot traffic, and the cameras do the real work. Just walk around a couple of times, keep an eye out for trouble, and call it in if you see anything weird, easy stuff." I needed the work, so I didn't ask too many questions. At first, the solitude was refreshing. It was just me, the whirring of the CCTV system in the tiny prefab office, and the occasional rustling of the wind. But as the nights dragged on, I started noticing little things. The lot wasn't as empty as it seemed. It started small, faint noises I couldn't place, footsteps that didn't belong to me, shadows shifting just beyond the reach of the overhead lights. I chalked it up to my imagination at first. After all, who would hang around a desolate parking lot in the dead of night? But there was something about this place that felt wrong. Tonight, that feeling was stronger than ever. The night had started uneventfully. I'd been sitting in the office, sipping coffee from a mug that tasted like it had been brewed a decade ago, watching the CCTV monitors cycle through their endless gray feeds. Most of the lot was clear, as always, except for a few scattered cars near the far end. They were likely from nearby buildings, but I still found their presence unsettling. At 2:47 a.m., I heard the first sound. A metallic clang, sharp and sudden, like someone had dropped a steel pipe. I frowned and leaned closer to the monitors, flipping through the camera feeds. The sound had come from the northwest corner, near the fenced-off construction site. The cameras covering that area were filled with static, the signal seemingly scrambled. "Figures," I muttered, grabbing my flashlight and stepping out of the office. The wind hit me as soon as I opened the door, carrying with it a strange metallic tang that made my stomach churn. I tried to shake it off and started walking, my boots crunching loudly on the uneven gravel. The lot seemed darker than usual, the spaces between the flickering lights stretching wider, the shadows deeper. The construction site came into view as I rounded the corner of the lot. A chain-link fence marked its perimeter, but the gate hung open, its padlock missing. I hesitated. I wasn't supposed to go beyond the fence. It wasn't technically part of the lot, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from inside. "Hello?" I called, shining my flashlight into the site. The beam caught piles of debris, concrete chunks, steel beams, and a stack of plywood, but nothing moved. Still, I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my spine. I stepped inside. The ground was uneven, littered with nails and shattered glass. The unfinished building loomed ahead, its skeletal frame silhouetted against the cloudy sky. I aimed my flashlight at the structure, its beams casting jagged shadows on the walls. And then I saw it. A figure, hunched and motionless, standing in the shadows just inside the doorway. "Hey," I shouted, my voice echoing against the concrete. "This is private property. You can't be here." The figure didn't respond. I stepped closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam illuminated the figure, a man or something that looked like one. His skin was grayish and papery, stretched too tightly over his face. His eyes reflected the light in an unnatural way, like wet glass. "Sir, are you?" Before I could finish, the man's head jerked toward me, his neck bending at an impossible angle. His mouth split into a grin that stretched far too wide, the skin around it cracking and oozing dark fluid. I stumbled back, tripping over a loose piece of rebar. My flashlight hit the ground, the beam flickering wildly. The figure moved toward me, its limbs twitching and jerking as if it didn't know how to use them properly. I scrambled to my feet and ran. The sound of scraping metal followed me as I bolted out of the construction site and back into the lot. The darkness seemed alive now, the shadows shifting and writhing just beyond the edges of the lights. When I finally reached the office, I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the keys, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The CCTV monitors flickered, the static clearing just long enough to show something that made my blood run cold. Figures. Dozens of them. Standing motionless among the parked cars. Their pale, glassy eyes stared directly into the cameras, unblinking. Their heads twitched in unison, tilting at unnatural angles. I grabbed the office phone and dialed 911, but all I got was static. The banging started a moment later. It wasn't a knock, it was a relentless pounding as if someone, or something, was trying to tear the door off its hinges. "Stay back," I shouted, though my voice was barely more than a whisper. The banging stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then I heard the soft click of the door's lock turning. I had locked it. I was sure of it. The door creaked open, revealing nothing but the empty lot outside. I held up my flashlight, the beam trembling as I pointed it at the doorway. There was no one there. Then I felt it. A cold breath on the back of my neck. I spun around, but the room was empty. The shadows in the corners seemed darker than before, though, as if they were thickening, pooling together like spilled ink. And then the whispering started. It was faint at first, like the rustling of leaves, but it grew louder, a cacophony of voices speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The shadows began to move, stretching toward me like living things. I backed into the corner, clutching my flashlight like a weapon, but the light did nothing to stop the darkness from closing in. The whispers grew deafening, each word stabbing into my mind like a blade. The last thing I saw before the shadow swallowed me was the monitors, flickering back to life. The figures in the lot were still standing there, their eyes fixed on the office. But they weren't alone anymore. There was a new figure among them, one with a security uniform and a face twisted in silent terror. If you ever find yourself in Lot 13, leave. Don't stay. Don't watch. And whatever you do, don't let the shadows see you.